Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Mitch Bell. I'm a retired Marine Lieutenant Colonel. My call sign is Taco, and welcome to Tall Tales with Taco. Tonight, I've got a very special guest on with me, with us, and that's Tim Lee. Tim was a Marine that I had the honor of meeting at the National Medal of Honor conference that was held here in DFW. I was blessed to be the MC for the event, and we were surrounded by lots and lots of famous folks, I'll say. And one of them that I found out was sitting right at my table, a man that I got to have some interaction with before I got up on stage. My father and I were both sitting next to him and his beautiful wife, Connie. And I got to tell you, if you've ever watched Forrest Gump and you know the trials that Lieutenant Dan went through after he lost his legs, well, you can imagine what he went through, only it's amazing what attitude and a little blessing from above when working with the big man can do for you in terms of finding your soul, finding your strengths and your weaknesses. And tonight we're going to talk a lot about that and God points in life and different things that set us apart. But as Marines in our faith and strength make us united. So I'd like to bring Tim Lee on. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome Tim Lee. How are you, sir?
I'm doing great, Mitch. It's an honor to be with you tonight. Thank you for having me. And I did enjoy our time together at that amazing conference with so many genuine heroes. You know, the word heroes uh, not used really in a real way in so much of a sense in our world today, but we were
Yeah.
among some real genuine heroes that night.
Well, don't preclude yourself from that
Yeah.
group because I hold you in that esteem. I'm like I put in my post. There are many men I admire to be. There are few that make that list, and you're on that list, Tim. You really, truly are. And tonight we celebrated my mom's birthday at the house, and my father leaned over and he said, "Hey, you make sure you tell Tim thanks for the book because you sent us 2 books." And my mom said, whatever you do, make sure you show the book so everybody in the audience can see where to get it and what it looks like. And it's on timlee.org where you can pick your copy of your book up, right?
Yes, sir. TimLee.org. And we've been so excited about the book. It's been out, I guess, probably a year and a half now,
Uh-huh.
and we've had such an amazing response to it. Uh, I hope we get to talk about a little bit about the co-author and some of the
Sure.
people involved in it. I know you've had an opportunity to read it, so
Well, you know, this is perfect timing because you're a minister, all right? And anybody out there listening, I want you to do me a huge favor. Doesn't matter if you're religious or not, but I'd like to take a minute and Tim and I are going to pray over a Vietnam vet, dear friend of our families. His son is my best friend, Mike Costanza. And Mike Costanza has been suffering in the hospital with COVID, only he's been on life support and in a coma. And what we need is we need some extra prayers from above to take care of Mike Costanza because, you know, Lord, there are few men in this world. There are men with big hearts, and I've never met a man with a bigger heart than Mike Costanza. So if you guys give me a second, just let me do this. Dear Lord, please take care of the guiding hand of the surgeons and the doctors and give us the strength and Mike the strength to fight and stay
yes,
with us because he has lots of things to do in this world. And we ask this in your name, Lord. Amen.
amen.
Well, thank you. Thank you guys for helping me out. I appreciate it. Tim, reading the book, you were the farthest thing from a man of God that I could tell. A hellraiser extraordinaire. Go back into a little bit of your childhood and what brought you to the Marines.
Well, it wasn't that I didn't have an opportunity to live for God because I was raised in a pastor's home. My dad was a Southern Baptist pastor for almost 60 years, and my mother, one of the godliest women that I've ever known. And so I was raised in a great home and Southern Illinois, and coal mines and cornfields and basketball country. We played
Mhm.
football, but it's just to wait for basketball to get there. And And so I actually became a Christian at a young age. I trusted Christ in my dad's church at the age of 10. And but then as a teenager, I started getting away from God. I let a lot of things come between me and the Lord. And um, I have I have four brothers and sister, one sister, and three brothers, and none of them were rebellious and acted out like I did. But I got to the point where I despised authority of all kinds of authority at school, authority with God, and especially authority with my mom and dad. I caused them so much grief and so much heartache and problems. And many times parents will come to me and ask me what my mom and dad did when I rebelled. And so, I tell them that, a little bit of the fun part is that I was loved a lot. My mom and dad would get a switch or a belt, and they say we were going to do this because we loved you, and well, they loved me a lot. But I became even more rebellious, and my life was messed up as a teenager. I was athletic in high school, played basketball, football, baseball, set track records in my high school. But
Right.
I kept getting further and further and further away from God. My life was really messed up and a lot of trouble. I never went to jail. I came close. A state trooper one night on the courthouse square around midnight told me that I had 5 minutes to get home, and I knew exactly what he meant. And I talked to him years later. His son was a Baptist pastor in Missouri, and I preached for him, and his dad was there. He remembered that well that night. But I
Yeah,
had a
but
lot
which
of
one? Who of us haven't strayed and rebelled against our parents? Which one of us
well,
out there could say that they
yeah,
never did? I mean, they're very far few, I think, in between.
you're right, but I was extreme with it. I mean, I caused mom and dad a lot of heartache. My mom wet her pillow at night with tears, and it was, like you said, all kids go through a spell, but it was meanness with me. It was just a little bit of rebellion. I was
Were
mean
you?
and
How old were you
caused them a
when you
lot of
ran?
grief.
How old were you when you ran away?
I was 15 years old. I actually came home on July the 4th, the day before my 16th birthday, and left home for 2 weeks. I was working at teeth tillers up on the square at the furniture store, and I came home at noon
Hmm.
hour to grab a bite to eat. And my mom had been downstairs and found a magazine I wasn't supposed to have. And so we'd already had a lot of problems, a lot of trouble, but I didn't say a word. I just turned around, walked back up out of the basement, went back up and asked for my pay. And in those days, I made $1 an hour
Oh
working teeth
wow!
tillers before minimum wage. And we put dinette tables together, dinette chair. We lift
Right.
heavy furniture and all that for $1 an hour. And but I got my $40. I took on my way out, I swiped a pair of shoes out of the dry goods of the store, and then I back to East St. Louis of all places, and spent the
That's kind
night.
of a rough
And
area, though, isn't it?
well, in those days still is, but it was a very high crime area,
Yeah.
and a lot of it was predominantly a African American city,
Yeah.
probably 95%. And here I'm a 15-year-old white kid, and so I asked the guy I got a room, and I asked the guy at the desk where I could get something to eat, and he warned me. He said, "You don't want to be walking at nighttime out here." I didn't know.
Right.
I was ignorant. I was from a little town of 3,000 people, and
Yeah.
all it was all white town, all white county where I was born and raised. I didn't know anything. I was just uh, ignorant about it. But it was a harrowing 2 weeks. I mean, it was a lot of problems and stuff that was going on. But my mom and dad actually, after the third day in the stockyards at East St. Louis trying to get a job, and there was one of my dad's deacons saw me there. He was a
Gotcha.
raised cattle. He was over there, but he didn't tell me. He just went back home and told my mom and dad. They got down on the living room floor, prayed for me, their prodigal son, and and so that 2 weeks, and finally I came to, like the prodigal son in the hog pen in the Bible. I came to my senses and said, "This is not doing very well. I'm going home." And they welcomed me with arms wide open. They were always they did love me. They really did.
Oh, that's great.
But it still wasn't over. I still caused them a lot of pain.
So you had 2 years to you graduate from high school, right? And you and
Graduated.
David joined the Marine Corps on the buddy program?
David Hutchinson and I joined the Marine. We actually joined the Marine Reserves, and nobody pulled any strings. You know, I just went in. We found a program, and I told young people all the time that I was tired of living at home. I wanted to change. I wanted something different. I was tired of being told what I could do and what I could not do, and how to get my hair cut. And so I decided to join the United States Marine Corps, which wasn't the smartest thing I ever did. And
oh, come on, you're in the club now, Rusty.
And then, I'd have been okay. I probably would have never went to Vietnam as long as I stayed in the reserves. They sent me to Paris Island, and I was there less than 24 hours. I met that fellow they called instructor. I decided I didn't like him, and he didn't like me. And again, it was a authority issue. You know, I was, and I think a lot of our problems in America with our kids today, a lot of it is with authority, that we don't have respect for people in authority. And so I didn't. And so but it wasn't too long that the Marines began to get my attention. And
right.
I after a period of time, I actually went to one day motivation. I don't even know if they have it anymore or not, but I got in trouble, and there were some other recruits that we got in trouble, and so they woke us up 4:30 in the morning, rolled us out of Iraq, told us we're going on a 20-mile march. Well, I'd never been on a 20-mile anything. I don't think we went 20 miles that day, but we thought we went 100 miles. They rolled
Bends
us
and
out,
thrusts,
and
push-ups,
yeah,
pull-ups.
we were none of it. I was in pretty good shape physically, but every one of us are falling out on the ground, sicker than dogs, but that day really was a day of change in my life. It wasn't a spiritual change. It was just a good change. It was something I needed that really got my attention. I think that if I'd have went the other way, it would have been the end. There was a recruit in my platoon that one day got out of Iraq and decided he didn't want to be a Marine. He didn't want to salute the flag. He didn't want to do anything. And he ends up going to, to the rock pile, and that would have been my next step in boot camp. And so that day I decided I want to be a Marine. And right in the middle of boot camp, my attitude completely changed. Mitch, I wanted to be a Marine. I fell in love with the Marine Corps at that moment, and I gave it everything I had. I became platoon guide. I never relinquished that position to the day I graduated. I was motivated. They sent me to one day motivation. I was motivated, man. Skinny Sergeant Lungford. I write about him in my book, and after my book was published, I got an email from his daughter, and he's dead now. But his daughter contacted me, and I sent her several of the books. But he probably didn't have but about a 28 or 29 inch waist, and that guy could run backwards all the time. We were running forward, and he was tough as all get out, but Skinny Sergeant Lunsford's what we called him behind his back. We didn't call him that to his face, of course.
Was David in your platoon, or who was your best friend out of that platoon? David stayed with you?
David Hutchinson in my platoon, but right in the middle of boot camp, I told my drill instructor I didn't want to be a reservist. I wanted to be a full-time Marine. They didn't even know if that could happen or not, but they went. They did some research. They came back, said sure enough. I signed the papers, and I went out of the reserves in boot camp into being a full-time Marine. David stayed in the reserves, did his 6 years. And but I went from boot camp. I graduated with a meritorious promotion, private first class, and I went to ITR, went to engineering school, I graduated with another meritorious promotion, which two meritorious promotions in less than 3 months was almost unheard of back in those days.
Yeah, yeah,
Um,
yeah.
but I was motivated. I'm telling you, Mitch, I wanted to be a Marine. I was motivated. I didn't care if people, they make fun of me. They already started calling me lifer and all that stuff. I didn't care. I wanted to be a Marine.
Yeah, so
And
you get into engineering, which folks out there who aren't in the military or Marines, when you hear engineer, I think demolition, blowing things up, and that was a big thing when we had career night, and the engineers like, you want to come hang out with the best? We get to blow stuff up, demo, engineer, demo. So
lots
you
of
got to blow a lot of
C4.
stuff up, didn't you? Yeah,
A lot we did. We built stuff and we blew stuff up. That was our two main jobs. We built a lot of bridges and a lot of buildings, and then we blew a lot of stuff up and used a lot of C4. We never had any problem with our food getting our C ration getting hot because we had C4 with us all the time. We was
right,
able to
right.
cook with. But
How long did
but
it take you before
but
you went to Vietnam?
well, I graduated. I got out of engineering school and I had 3 weeks leave.
Uh-huh.
I went home to Illinois, and actually, while I was there, Mitch, back to the spiritual side, on the last day, I really thought that I made things right with God that morning before I left. Mom and Dad took me to St. Louis on Monday, and I got on that plane, and I basically just told God I couldn't do it. Those men were Marines. I was afraid they'd laugh at me. I was afraid they'd make fun of me. I went to Camp Pendleton for 2 weeks.
Hmm.
And then we flew from there to Okinawa, was there for 2 weeks, got all of our shots and prep. And then we flew to Da Nang. And we flew in the middle of the night. And I mean, Marines talk about how tough they are, but when we flew at nighttime, we see these flares going off and all this stuff and going on. And they tell us when we land, no hesitation, you head for, they point the direction you're to go. And, as a Marine and in the early stages of right there in Vietnam, and you've heard about this war zone, it was scary. It was
Hmm.
pretty frightening even for a Marine. But
And you kicked off right away doing minesweeping patrols and
I
different
did,
things, didn't you?
yeah, we did. I did like a week or two of guard duty, and I think every Marine gets to do that when they went to Vietnam. And
Hmm.
then it wasn't long. I was out on. Well, we did do some building too. We built, like I said, bridges and roads and some buildings, Butler
Hmm.
buildings, and but then it wasn't long. I was on my first mine sweep. I had some good Marines. That broke me in and helped me, and they've been there a long time, and some of them were getting ready to come back home and to show you the ropes and to give you a little bit of
Sure.
confidence, to help you understand what you're doing. It's a little bit different walking an actual mine sweep than going through it at engineering school.
What was the toughest landmine to try to find out there?
So say that again, Mitch.
What was the toughest sort of booby trap landmine
Oh,
on the roads
well,
that were the tough ones for you to find? You probably had easy ones that were gimmies, and then
well,
the ones that
the
were
one,
real hard.
yeah, the ones that were buried, and especially if we like the one that I got where I got hit at, you had a lot of elephant grass, a lot of rough terrain, and it's
Mhm.
very very tedious. It's very slow, and it wears on your nerves. It's every little inch. It's not taking a big step. It's every little inch you're covering to make sure you're not missing anything. We
Right.
had some South Korean Marines that served with us. They're the toughest people I've ever been around in my life. They were unbelievably tough, and they were with us for several weeks. And they would we would walk the actual road that we were on for this one 5 or 6 week stretch, and they would walk the outside perimeters. They were engineers like us, but
Mhm.
their job was walk the outside perimeters, and one of them missed what was called a toe popper. A toe popper was basically meant to hurt your foot, possibly blow some toes off, or to blow a tire out of a vehicle. And so we're walking, and here comes this vehicle carrying this Korean South Korean officer, and and it hits a toe popper and it blew a tire out on the Jeep, and I mean, this Korean officer went ballistic. He went nuts, and he got his guys over there. And I mean, he took a board. There was no court martial. There was no penalty. He took a stick and began to beat these guys. We sat there with our eyes wide open, staring. We thought, and they took it like the Marines they were, you know, and realized that somebody had blown that opportunity to get that toe popper.
But did you the first couple weeks that you were going out there? I know you're scared. Did you ever have a point where you just got on your knees and you prayed that night? And how do I put this? I remember driving around, having seen in Iraq the effects of the IEDs as the air boss bringing, flying the wounded in when we would do the 9 lines. I never got to leave the base except by helicopter. So all the guys that were wounded by IEDs and whatnot. And then in Afghanistan, 2008, I'm driving around every day around Kabul. I'm going out to these different places. And the first 2 weeks, I didn't sleep worth crap because I was having nightmares about the IEDs. And this Navy chief looked at me and said, you doing all right? I said, honestly, I'm not sleeping well. And he goes, what's the matter? And I said, well, I keep thinking about getting blown up or some guy rolling up next to me and popping a hand grenade under my car. And I have all these weird fears. And he says, you know what, sir, I'll tell you what, get on your knees tonight, get on the rack, get on your knees, pray that God will take you quick. And if he takes you quick, then you don't have to worry about anything. The easy part's dying. Just pray that you go quick. And if you do that, you'll be all right. If you don't, you'll never last the 8 months here. And I'm like, all right. And I did it. And it was like 1,000 pounds off my shoulders to just say, hey, just go ahead and take me quick and I'll live full steam from here. And it was kind of there were no atheists in combat. I guarantee you that.
Well, I think, Mitch, everybody that's ever been in combat knows exactly what you just said. You know that you can't constantly go around in fear, and that every day that you're in a war zone, that you can't, but you also can't be lackadaisical. You can't be careless. Right. You can't just fluff it off. So it's walking a fine line, realizing that I've got a job to do, and I've got to do my job, and there are casualties in war, and there are so I think everyone that's ever been in a war zone understands exactly what you just said, that it happens in that way or something similar to that to everybody, that you go to that place to say, okay. And yes, and I prayed a lot, man. I mean, it was, and I had my best friend, Corporal Lee Gore. He and I flew to Vietnam on the same plane. We were the best of friends. It's a great story. They find in my book that he was a black Marine. I was a white Marine. He was from a nearly all black county and an all black high school. I was all white, and yet we become best friends. We didn't look at each other's color. There's so much racial tension in the world today. But if they would have seen Lee Gore and I and the way we interacted and the way we were, and everybody could have
your brothers
been similar. That's like, yeah, exactly. We were. The only color we knew was green merino, but he was a prayer warrior. That guy who knew the Lord, and I was saved, like I told you earlier. But I was out of the will of God. My life was still not spiritually right. I got my head screwed on right about authority and Marines and all that, but I still wasn't right with God.
Well, let's fast forward. You spent almost a year in combat. And right before you leave, take me to that day where you hit that mine.
We got 30 days left in Vietnam, and actually, 7th Engineers are getting ready to pull out and going back to Okinawa and then back to California. And so my sergeant offered me a desk job, and it was coveted, a desk job. But for some reason, again, I was a Marine. I wasn't trying to be tough. I wasn't trying to be a hero or anything like that. It's just that
you're a good leader.
I want to be with my men. I want to be with, and some of them were new in Nam, and some of them only been there a few weeks, and a couple of them just a few days. So I got my men together. They told me, I had to take my men on a mine sweep, which I had been on numerous sweeps, and but I got them together that morning, March the 8th, 1971. It'll soon be 50 years. Um,
Wow.
um, and so I got my men together that morning. I told them that I would walk point man. Normally, I'd be in the back of the squad with the radioman, the corpsman, the lieutenant if he was with us, and again, I wasn't trying to be a hero. I just remember how it was when I first got there, and I had people show me the ropes and people
Hmm.
that did things that they didn't have to do, but they did to help us out. So I from my walk point man that day. We walked that morning, no problems. Found a couple of rounds. We detonated them, and then at noon hour, while we were eating, my best friend were asking me if I wanted him to take over his point, and he was as qualified as I was. He could have very easily done it, but for some reason, I was a squad leader. I told him I would finish out the day, and then the next day he could walk point.
Hmm.
And so we picked up where we left off from, and 45 minutes later, I stepped on a 60-pound mine, and it blew me several feet up in the air, ripped both my legs off my body. I should have been killed instantly. It was a big enough
Right.
mine to destroy a Jeep. And I was only unconscious for a few moments. We had entered a major minefield. There was one of the South Korean Marines that was with us. Um, some people may think I'm mistaken to call them Marines, Koreans, but they're not. They're not South Vietnamese. They were South Korean Marines that were serving with us, and
Rocks. Sure.
as at the, yeah, rock exactly. And the exact same moment that I stepped on mine, he stepped on one and lost one of his legs.
Oof.
Our bulldozer driver set his blade down on a mine. So now we're in a major minefield, and there's a lot of noise and confusion, smoke, chaos. Some of my men think we're taking on small arms fire. We weren't, but it sounded
Right.
like it because there was so much action within just a few seconds of each other. And so that day, in the midst of all that confusion, my head was laying in the lap of Corporal Lee Gore. And that day, tears streaming down his face. He was praying out loud, begging God to help me. That
Yeah.
day, I did pray, and I prayed a prayer unlike any that I had prayed since I've been in Vietnam. I wanted to live. Somebody you never
Yeah.
lived till you almost died, and I know what that means. I wanted to live, uh,
Right.
but I was in extreme pain. I was, like I said, I was only unconscious for a couple of moments, and the reason that so many uh, Vietnam vets survived the Vietnam War when the same uh, Korean vets were dying at a higher rate because they weren't able to get them to a hospital as quick as we were able to get to it, and
Our
that was
golden hour. Yeah.
thankful to our medevac choppers, and they from the time they called our medevac chopper, 20 minutes later, I was on a chopper, and then 20 minutes later, I was on a hospital ship, and
Hmm.
and it saved my life. None of my men thought that I was going to live, and uh,
Well,
um,
not even the doctors
Earl,
thought you lived. The
yeah,
doctor
well,
on the hospital
yeah,
ship.
Dr. Robert Bailey, Earl Lewis. Go back to Earl for just a minute. Earl was uh, the fifth man back on the mine sweep that day, and
Hmm.
he came to one of my meetings up in Dayton, Ohio, gave his heart to Christ. He's an amazing guy. We've been together so many times. But he told Connie and I that it actually looked like someone taking a 5-gallon bucket of red paint and just poured it all over me. He said none of my men thought that I would live. But on that hospital ship, Dr. Robert Bailey, I was had all kinds of infection and high
Hmm.
degree temperature, a lot of complications. And he and I were reunited in Garland, Texas years ago. And he told the people that night that they didn't think that I would make it. But I tell people God had a plan for my life. And it's a miracle that I'm here talking to you tonight, 50 years later, uh, from March the 8th, 1971, day that I should have died. But I wanted to live, and I believe God heard the prayers of Corporal Lee Gore. I believe God heard my prayer that day. I begged God.
Yeah.
to let me live. And
Well, this
so
doctor had that
yeah,
doctor had a big part to play back
he did.
later at the VA with you. So okay, so you get wounded, you get fixed, and you end up in a hospital in San Diego
Philadelphia,
or in
Philadelphia. Yeah,
Philadelphia. I was thinking
actually,
San
I
Diego
had
first.
choice. I could have went to San Diego or Philadelphia, and Philadelphia was a choice because it was a lot closer to my parents. And
Right.
but anyhow, I spent 2 weeks on the hospital ship, 2 weeks on the island of Guam in the Naval Hospital, unconscious
Mhm.
most of the time, touch and go. Went from 187 pounds to less than 80 pounds. I don't have a lot of memories of the hospital ship, or I have a few, or the hospital in Guam. I do have a few, but they're all horrible memories. I was in so much
Mhm.
pain, you know. And then they took me to Philadelphia. I think it was April. I got hit on March the 8th. I think it was April the 4th that we landed in Philadelphia, and it
Mhm.
was snowing in April in Philadelphia. And so I ended up spending almost 8 months in the hospital there, surgery after surgery after surgery. And can I
Wow.
go ahead and tell them about Dr. Bailey and the
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
miracle? Okay,
Yeah.
this is a great story, and it's
It's
part
a
of this.
great story.
It's part of it's kind of tragic, but I had a couple of young doctors, and I know they meant well. There's no two ways about it, but they were throwing people in that war, Mitch. I mean, that were not prepared. You know, it was just to get
Mhm.
warm bodies there, and a draft was on. You've got an all volunteer Army and Marines today. A lot of the guys that were serving actually didn't want to be there. They were just doing it because they had to. But I had
Mhm.
a couple of young doctors in the hospital. They were cut happy. My right leg was actually at the knee when I got hit, but
Mhm.
they had infection. It just kept cutting, kept cutting, kept cutting. And one of the best nurses I had the whole time I was in the hospital came to my bed and gave me a tranquilizer. Said the doctor's going to come talk to you a little bit. They wanted to calm me down, so they gave me this. I went to sleep. They came and woke me up out of sleep, very coldly, methodically. The young doctor said, "We're going to on Monday do another surgery. Going to
Hip
do a hip
dysplasia or something, right?
do a hip disarticulation."
Oh,
And so I
yeah.
honestly, I was very sleepy. I didn't understand. I just figured it was another surgery. So I went back to sleep. And a little later, when I woke up, this nurse was standing beside my bed, the kindest nurse I had the whole time I was in the hospital.
Mhm.
And she said, "Tim, do you understand what they're going to do on Monday?" And I looked at her. I said, "Well, just another surgery, I guess, and clean up the wound." She said, "No, she's going to take your entire right hip off, and you're not going to be able to." You got to remember, this is 50 years ago. You're not going to be
Right.
able to set up. You're going to be on your back or your stomach the rest of your life. And Mitch, I got to tell you, I've never been bitter. My parents, my mom and dad would have told you, my family, my wife, my children, people that know me well will tell you, I've never been bitter. I've never been angry. I've never been mad at God or my country or the Marines or anyone. But at that moment, I went to the bottom of everything. It just I sunk so low.
Sure.
When she said those words, "You're going to be on your stomach or your back the rest of your life," then I thought, I don't want to live. I went down
Yeah.
the hallway. We was on a ward. There's like 30 or 40 beds on this ward. We didn't have private rooms. We didn't have semi-private rooms. We was on a ward with 20, 30, 40. If you were on Ward 1A in Philadelphia, you were an
Mhm.
amputee from the Vietnam War. One leg, two legs, and an arm. But we had a little room down at the end of the ward called a solarium. It wasn't big, maybe about 10 room. Had a little
Mhm.
black and white television set, a couple of chairs in there, and had a pay phone. Some young people listening to me tonight don't have a clue what I'm talking about, but had a pay phone on the wall.
If
And you actually
sure.
went and put money in it. And I called my mom and dad, and Mitch, I was crying. I was a 21-year-old Marine, but I was crying. I told my dad, I said, "Dad, I believe I'd rather die than to be on my stomach and my back the rest of my life." I was athletic, and I'd always done everything I wanted to do. And up until then, I was okay. But when she told me that, so my dad called the hospital, and they canceled the surgery on Monday from
Oh, wow.
doing the hip disarticulation. It was a miracle. They didn't
Right.
have to listen to my dad. I'm in the military. They're military doctors. They could pretty well do whatever they well please. So on Monday, if you don't have surgery, you go to what we Marines call stump rounds, and you go to a different part of the hospital, and it remember this is military, so there's these two long tables, and all the people that have anything to do with your case are on the other side of the table. Your specialists are there, the prosthetic people are there, the psychiatrists are there, and your
Right.
doctors are there. And so these two young doctors were there that morning, but in between them was this older doctor. He's at least 20 years older than them, had these wire rimmed glasses. I still
Uh,
see him sitting there. And so I'm having the worst weekend of my life. Um, they call my name alphabetically. I go up to the table. This new doctor, this older doctor's got my chart, these metal clipboards. You see him, and it's thick. And he's going through all these papers. He's looking at this. Finally, looks up to me and he said, "Do you know who I am?" And I wasn't in a mood to play a name game with anybody. And I said, "Well, I don't have a clue who you are." And he said, "My name's Doctor Bailey, Doctor Robert Bailey." He said, "I did the first surgery on you on the hospital ship SS Sanctuary." And of course, I didn't know that. Like I said, I don't remember a whole lot of what went on that hospital ship. But then he saw what these two young doctors been doing to me, and he became angry. He stood up through
right.
that clip down on that table. He said a few choice words I've been wanting to say, but I wasn't allowed to say. I was enlisted man. These doctors are officers, and he takes me to surgery. Long story short, takes me to surgery, uh, and he doesn't take anything off. He doesn't remove anything. He just cleans up my wound. He puts me on a
Hmm.
brand new antibiotic, and
Hmm.
I know why these young doctors hadn't heard about this new antibiotic, but he knew about it. And within 2 weeks, I was making preparation to be discharged from that hospital. He would come
Oh
down.
man.
He'd come down every day. He'd pass everyone else up on that wharf. For some reason, he just took an interest in me. He passed everyone else. Come to my rack. Stay long. Those young doctors are always in a hurry. They wanted to talk. They
Right.
were going to amputate this index finger. It's got a piece of shrapnel and I can't bend it down.
Hmm.
My mom said no. She was there when they told her that, and she went and got me a rubber ball. And I began to squeeze it, and I can't still bend that finger down, but it didn't cause me in trouble. That shows you the extreme of these doctors wanting to take my finger off for that reason, you know. But he would come down, talk to me, never get in a hurry, and that's what I needed. And God knew what I needed. God sent Dr. Bailey to that hospital, and that's the reason why we're here talking tonight. I done something for God on my stomach or my back? Maybe, I don't know. But you know, I've flown nearly 6 million miles with airlines across the world, and
Hmm.
in the last 42 years, and I'm very active. I've ridden horses. I go swimming. I go fishing. I went through the Alaska tundra on my head and my butt and shot a nearly 7 foot tall black bear and skinned it out and went back the same 2 miles through the wildest, wickedest terrain in the world, the tundra. So I maybe could have done something, but nothing like I've done for these
Yeah,
past
because you
50
had that
years.
that point. No, at that point, now you're looking at all of a sudden discharge, which is a wonderful thing. You want to get the heck out of Dodge, put Philly in the rearview mirror. Tell everybody what you did. You got a specially rigged car, which probably wasn't real popular back in the 70s,
Well, it was new.
and
It
then
was new,
it was new
but
idea. Yeah.
yeah,
So what car did you get?
I got an Oldsmobile Royal. I think it's called a Royal '88, and
Uh
it was good. I picked it out on in a magazine, and
huh.
of course, we internet or anything like that. So I called teacher tillers, the people that I worked for at that dry goods store, the furniture store, owned a car
Hmm.
dealership, and he's up. He's in heaven now, but he was such a good man to me. But so they ordered this car and they ordered these hand controls, but nobody got to use them. They were scared of them, and so they told me, they said, "Here it is." So I got in. It was either hit the brake or hit the building, and fortunately, I hit the brake. And within 10 minutes, I was driving that car like I'd driven it all my life. But
Right.
it's like I think it's attitude, Mitch. Is I wanted to live. I wanted to do something with my life. I didn't want to sit around and feel sorry for myself. I didn't want other people to feel sorry for myself.
Yeah.
And so it's just that. Uh, my book's called Born on the 5th of July, and the movie Born on the 4th of July. and the guy's a Vietnam vet, and
Ron Kovic,
yeah,
same
yep,
path. He
yep,
could have gone
and
one way or the other.
yep, and he became very bitter and very angry, and I just didn't want that. I didn't know him at that time, of course, but I didn't want to. I was on that hospital ward. There was a lot of bitterness. There was a lot of anger,
Yeah.
and then all the negative stuff. These people didn't know how to, you know, it's different today with these young guys coming home. I've been to Walter Reed. I've visited with these guys in hospitals. Their attitudes are great, but they talk to them, and they tell them you can do this, and you got a plan. I heard all the negative stuff, all the things I would never be able to do for 8 months in a hospital, telling me all the time, you won't be able to do this, you won't be able to do this. Well, that just made me more determined. I was bullheaded enough to say, you're going to tell me I can't do something. I'm going to prove you wrong. I'm going to do it.
Would you ever meet Ron? I mean, has his attitude changed since that book
Read
was written in
stories, and
'76?
I don't think it's nearly as bad as it was at one time, but I don't think it's changed a lot. But I think the Lord has a lot to do with what has happened in my life. I got my life right with God, and God let me live. I went back to my dad's church. It was really the prodigal son came home on that day, and they welcomed me with arms wide open, and full of love and grace and compassion and forgiveness. And so then,
Tell him about meeting Connie.
yeah,
Now, how did you
Sunday
meet?
school.
If she's back there somewhere, she's got to come. She's got to come in the camera. We
I
got to
don't.
at
I
least
don't
say hi
think
to her.
I don't think you're going to get her over here tonight. We should have warned her ahead of time. But um, I, um, I went to Sunday school classroom. I was actually still in the hospital, and
Mm-hmm.
I was getting ready to face this surgery that we were just talking about. And of course, I didn't know the extent of it, but they thought it would be good if I went home for a couple of weeks to be with my family. They'd come out and see me, but so I went home. I flew to Evansville, and they picked me up on Saturday. But a lot of my family met me there, and it was a welcome home. I was never spat on. I was never called at names. I came home to sanitary. What I tell people, I was in a sanitary medevac chopper, a sanitary hospital ship, sanitary plane back to Philadelphia, and so I was never hated on like that. But I
Mm-hmm.
know a lot of my friends were, a lot of my buddies were called horrible names, and all they did was what their country asked them to do, in
Mm-hmm.
Vietnam. But I went home for those 2 weeks, and then on Sunday morning I went to church, mom and dad, and Sunday morning I went to Sunday school, and there Connie was sitting, and I saw her, and I just knew, it was one of those things that love at first sight, and so that was the fastest 2 weeks of my life. I had to go back to the hospital for more
Yeah.
surgeries, but Con and I started corresponding and talking. I burnt that payphone up back in that
Yeah.
Solaris.
Yeah. So, how much money did you spend on the payphone? Because
Oh,
this is before calling cards. So you have a stack of dimes or quarters, and you feed them
yeah,
in.
quarters. Keep quarters, and
Operator.
yeah, keep feeding that payphone.
Yeah.
And then, so I got out of the hospital, and went home, and kind of I started dating, and then I proposed to her. She said yes. We got married in April 28th, 1972,
Uh-huh.
and so it'll be 49 years this year. And then about a year. I don't know if you want to go another direction here. You just tell me, Mitch. I'm talking. It's your show.
No,
You
no,
tell me what.
I'm enjoying it. This is great. I mean,
Okay.
I was going to talk God points because I mean,
Yep.
if she is not the great, 49 years is your role model, and I always look at things like God points. Had I not gone this direction, I went left instead of right, and I got to this point where I thought, man, I really got screwed. And then I went this direction. I wouldn't have met my wife.
Yeah.
I wouldn't have the life that I have right now. I mean, my life would be completely different. As I tell her, I'd be some single, shut-in, 55-year-old dude living in a garage somewhere,
Yeah.
as a single airline pilot. But had I not had that blessing, I wouldn't be where I am. So I truly believe that there are reasons that you went this direction, and then from this direction up to this direction, and that puts you in the path with Connie. You guys are locked. You get married, and life just opens up.
Yeah.
You just
Yeah. God's
God
given us
closes one door
three.
and give you three
Absolutely.
windows.
we have three great children, Ryan, Jan, and Amber, and six awesome grandchildren. Our 16-year-old Allie's in heaven.
Mm.
God blessed our family, and but it was like a God thing that, like you said, the Sunday school class. And then about a year after we were married, I really began. I believe that God was calling me to preach, and
Mm.
honestly, I didn't want to be a preacher. I was raised in a preacher's home, and I didn't want to do that. I thought about getting in politics, and some local
Right.
people in my county tried to come and talk to me and my parents about me running for office, and but my dad felt like they were kind of using me, so
Yeah.
I didn't ever get in politics, but well, I did. I ran for town council and I got elected. We live in a little town, 300 people. I said it's easy to get elected when nobody runs against you. So I got,
So you
but
went and hung out with my cousin Jerry
yeah,
Falwell,
yeah.
and
As
went to Liberty, right?
I used to watch him on the old time gospel hour. This right when I first came home, and I've answered the call to preach, and then preached for all over Southern Illinois, Southern Indiana, St. Louis, Missouri area. And then I
Hmm.
pastored for 5 years there in my hometown, McLeansboro. And then God put me in evangelism. Now I'm doing this, start my 43rd year of doing this work, evangelism. And this is all I'll ever do. I love doing what I do. And so I was watching Old Time Gospel when I was pastor, and Dr. Jerry Falwell was on there. And
Hmm.
I don't mean this in an arrogant way at all. Some people are going to totally misunderstand this, but I used to dream about being on the Old Time Gospel Hour. I was pastoring a church of 100 people, and I would dream about that someday I would preach on the Old Time Gospel Hour. Well, I ended up preaching on his television program, his nationwide, probably 700 or 800 stations at one time. I preached on the Old Time Gospel a dozen times or more. And then I
Yeah.
preach at Liberty University every year. And I used to preach what they called the super conference. But it wasn't arrogance on my part. It's just I believed that God was going to do this.
Right.
And I've had the opportunity to speak in some unbelievable places and crowds and situations.
Well,
I've
you
tried
do a
never.
lot. Yeah, you do a
Go ahead.
lot for our vets as well. You guys, you go back to San Diego and to Paris Island. You talk to the recruits,
Oh
don't you?
man.
And the Wounded Warrior
Oh
programs.
yeah,
I'm
that's
sure. How many Wounded
now
Warrior
now
events
now you
have you
got my
gone?
attention. Yeah, this you got my attention here. Now this is go to Paris Island. This is unbelievable. We 2013. I talked to Steve Benefield last night for 30, 45 minutes. He's a chaplain in the Navy. He
Hmm.
heard me preach when he was 17 years old in St. Charles, Missouri. He was running from God, out of the will of God as a teenager. He got his life right with God. God called him to ministry, and he became a chaplain. He's serving. He was serving in 2013 at MCRD Paris Island. Only the two
Right.
places you go to be an enlisted Marine, Paris Island or San Diego. And he called me and said, "Would you want to come and speak to the recruits at Paris Island?" Man alive, I want to come and speak to the recruits. You better believe I do. Let me pray about this. Okay, I prayed. Let's do it. And long story short, we've been there now 28 times. We go every 12 to 13 weeks. It's a brand new crowd every time we go. We'll have 2,500 to 3,500 recruits, Marines. We have church on Sunday morning for an hour and a half to 2 hours, and no restrictions. We bring in a work team from Jacksonville,
Mhm.
Florida, and it is unbelievable. You hear 3,000 Marine recruits saying God's not dead, or 10,000 reasons. It'll put goosebumps on top of your goosebumps. And then I get up and give my story, and they give a public invitation for people to come to Christ. And we saw thousands and thousands and thousands to come and give their hearts to Jesus Christ. And so we've been 20 times there. We've been 3 times to San Diego. We're trying to get this door open in San Diego where we can come on a regular basis as well. But this is my heartbeat. If I do nothing else the rest of my life, I want to do this till the Lord calls me home.
Well, I got a friend, Paula Quick. She probably went to boot camp just a few years ago. She probably heard you talk. She's on here. She went there a few years ago. She's probably going to be beating me up here later on. But yeah, that's great. So any way that we could help you establish more stuff over on Paris Island side or San Diego side,
Well,
I'm
the
sure I could
Paris
work it
Island.
through the 8th Marine Corps District, and we can go from 8th Marine Corps District to the CG at San Diego
San Diego.
to try.
Right
Yeah,
now, right here's the deal. Right now, the bases are closed because of COVID. All of them are,
sure,
and
sure,
outsiders, and of course, Paris Island is a closed base anyhow. Their parents, grandparents are allowed on to graduation, and but now, so we've had to skip 3 events last year,
mm,
and we're just hoping and praying somebody in the Pentagon says, "Okay, we can do this." Those people are coming on and off the base all the time, anyhow, and got
hmm,
civilians that work on the base. They come on and off the base all the time. So there's really not any reason why we can't do it, except they just got these stringent controls right now. And so
yeah,
we're praying that those will be lifted. And if somebody, we thought we were going to get in San Diego, it's on the chaplain's hands. And of course, the CEO of the base of Paris Island was the actual one to sign off on us coming in 2013. And they call
right.
me, I'll call myself this, but they call me a Legends speaker, and I'm scheduled through 2024. But they told me I can do it indefinitely as long as I want to. I want to do it until the Lord calls me home.
Well, let's say that after we get our shots and this whole COVID thing kind of calms down, which I don't know. I mean, I sit there and hear, "Oh, you got to get your shots now. We got to get the immunization." Okay, we get the immunization. Now we still got to wear a mask everywhere we go. But I
And
walk into a
a lot
restaurant
of
and I wear a mask. I take it off. The waiter touches COVID. I catch it. I mean, who knows?
you
But
got
I'm just
common sense, Mitchell,
straight.
but common sense isn't so common,
Yeah, common virtue,
you
right?
know, we got to have this mask on until we get to the table at the restaurant. But once you sit down, that COVID doesn't bother you anymore. You know, it flees once you sit down.
It's invisible force field. Yeah. Yeah,
I'm
when I
sitting
was eating
down all the
tacos,
time.
when I'm eating tacos today, man, the guy he doesn't wear gloves. He's bringing the stuff down, touching. I'm grabbing my glass.
Yeah.
Who knows?
I
And maybe
know,
that's how I
and
got it.
I think we have to be careful. I think I know it's real. Like your friend we prayed for
Oh God,
earlier, Mike,
you have
and I've had friends to die from it, and dear friends. So I know it's real. I also know heart disease is real. Also know cancer is real. Also know a whole bunch of other stuff that people die
yeah.
from all the time is real. And I know we got to use good judgment. I think sometimes we overreact and
Well,
we're hurting our kids.
yeah, I hope we get the shots that we can sit there and say we get the immunization. Life is good. Let's go back to somewhat normal. Wash your hands. If you're sick, don't go out. Stay
You know,
home.
were these
Common sense. You know.
were these people not washing their hands before? That's what I want.
Well, I mean, I hate to say I've flown with guys that you look over at and you're like, what are you doing? Why aren't you home? Oh, I didn't want to call in sick. I'm like,
Uh,
dude,
yeah,
I don't
now
want to
you're going
fly
to be
with you.
sick.
Now you're going to
Yeah,
get me sick. You go home, pack your
yeah,
trash. I'm not going to
yeah,
fly with you. Go call in
yeah,
sick, you loser. Um, but anyway, I tell you, man, it's funny. Yeah, it's weird in a sense. So let's hope that we
yeah.
get this thing going where you can get back out there because I think spiritually we all need stuff. And I think those guys in that position as a young, impressionable 17, 18-year-old, 18, 19-year-old kid can look at you and look what you've persevered and know that I'm going to be all right. If something happens to me, I'm going to be all
Well,
right.
they listen, and they automatically there's respect there because these recruits and the Marines that are there, they know that I paid a price, that I've earned the right to speak. So they listen so attentively. No one gets up and leaves. No one walks around. You get 3,000 in that all-weather building, and they're there for an
Mm-hmm.
hour and a half or 2 hours. It's just an amazing experience. It's a God thing. It really is a God thing. And
Mm-hmm.
so I want all your listeners and friends to please pray. We call them our Marine events at MCRD Paris Island. Just put it on your prayer list and pray doors open, and then that we can get back to doing what I'm in churches. I was in a church, Pensacola, Sunday, 2,500 people, and
Wow.
we're in churches, and a lot of churches are open, and we're doing that ministry. We just want to be back on the military bases. I've got a guy up in Camp Lejeune, the chaplains want me to come up there and do a very special event. Again, he can't do it right now because of COVID.
How about the Army? You have any connections with the Army?
I've done a few things on Army bases and with the Navy, and I, I spoke at Andrews Air Force Base one time, so Air Force, but primarily Marines. I guess Marines need the Lord more than anybody.
No, don't say that, because Randy Stillinger is going to call me up and go, "Hey, you heard Tim, right? You guys, you all need
You
a lot
need
more help than we do."
you're bad sinners, yeah.
Well, listen, I tell you what, Tim, this has been fantastic, and I can't thank you enough for coming out and joining us. I was going to ask if anybody has any questions. Now would be the
Can
time.
I
Go
say
ahead
one more
and post them
word
up.
about
Oh yeah, go ahead. No, we got
just
plenty of
one
time.
more word about the book? Born on the 5th of July. Bob Hamer was my co-writer. You got to interview Bob sometime.
All right.
Taco. He's a great friend. I went through Ollie North, and Ollie wrote the forward for my book. Ollie's a tremendous patriot and
Yeah.
Marine. We've been together probably 20 times. Went to Israel together 2 or 3 years ago. But Bob Hamer wrote my book. He was 4 years FBI, or no,
Mm-hmm.
4 years Marine. He was an officer in the Marine Corps, and then he went to the FBI. He was a field agent for 26 years. Unbelievable stories. He's written several books. One book called The Last Undercover. You got to get it and read it. You'll have to take a shower when you get through. He catches the horrible pedophiles in California. The guy almost single-handedly nabs the 10 worst pedophiles in California.
Wow.
But he co-wrote the book. I mean, he put it together. He made my story flow. People don't want to put it down. That's the most common phrase we've heard from hundreds and hundreds of people. I couldn't put it down. When they started reading it, they wanted to stay, keep reading it until it was completed. But
Yeah.
I'll tell you, you would have an interesting time with Bob sometime.
All
I'll
right.
get you the
I tell
information.
you what. Hook me up with Bob,
Yeah.
and do me a favor and send Ollie North an email and just say, "Hey, Ollie, I've got this guy that used to worship you as a 13-year-old, and we got our haircut at the same place. This Lebanese Isa, this guy
Yeah.
Isa he used to cut hair at the Pentagon, and they opened up a little barbershop in Westover in Arlington, Virginia. And Ollie would come in to get his haircut, and then I got my haircut for Civil Air Patrol back in the 70s when it wasn't cool to have short hair in 77,
Right.
78. I've got short hair. And so I'd see Lieutenant Colonel North, and of course, surrounded by Marines, grew up around Marines. And then the whole Iran-Contra thing opened up. And
Yep.
Isa, he put up there, Ollie, they found out where he got his haircut because everyone loved his high and tight. And so they started showing up at the barbershop, and they go, "I want a haircut like Ollie North." So he put up a thing that said the Ollie North special, and it
Wow.
jacked the price from like $250 to $8. And this is back in the day, right?
Yeah, that's
So
a
I
lot of
walk
money.
in one day, and I'm using my paper route money and stuff for haircuts. I'm like, "Hey, Isa, I'm not paying $8 for a damn haircut." And he goes, "Oh, no, that's for all the tourists. That's all for all the people that want to be like Ali North. I
That's
take care
funny.
of you. Don't worry about you. Your old-time customer." He was a great guy. Tell Ali I would love to have him on the show, but I
I
just
will.
don't have his contact or the clout to call up Fox News
I
or
will.
somebody and go,
We were together right before the election in Pensacola, same church as that Sunday, and he did a phenomenal job. The guy's close to 80 years old, I guess. I'm not for sure, but the guy's sharp. The guy's brilliant,
"Yeah,
unbelievable. He spoke that night, and the people were spellbound. It's a great job.
well,
But I
well,
will
good.
tell you.
All right. Tell him." And next week, I've got Freddie Joe Farnsworth. He's a Marine. He's going to be on the show, and Freddie's going to talk about he he's an infantry guy that helps Dale Dye, and Dale Dye was my second guest I had who does Hollywood stuff. And Freddie Joe's going to talk about his experiences of putting these young actors through a boot camp to try to teach them what it's like to be a Marine.
Oh, wow.
You'll get a kick out of that if you get to listen
Cool.
to it next
I will
Tuesday.
watch. Cool.
Well, Tim, God bless you, sir. And I want to tell you, thank you again for supporting the A team. Because if you are on my airplane, you call me anytime you fly an American, just do me a favor, send me a text and just go, "Hey, I'm flying on this date on this flight," and give me the flight number and the date. And I will call the captain and the FO, and I'll just say, "Hey, do me a favor, take care of my special friend." Okay. I will do that every single flight you fly, every single flight you fly. You just text me. It's not a pain. It's
You're so kind.
from the love of my heart. taking care of a Marine that I really
I know you
admire.
mean it.
Okay,
I know you mean it,
I
Taco.
will.
Thank you
I will
so
call
much. I
every
love you,
single one
man.
of them up. I love
Semper
you
Fi.
too. And listen, you give Connie a hug and tell her we'll get her on the show next time.
Yeah,
Okay.
we'll do it again sometime. We will.
I'd like to have you guys come over for dinner, and then I'll bring my folks over too. They're right down the street. All right, sir. Well, listen, you have a good one, and I'll catch up with
Thank you,
you
sir.
again real soon.
All right. Love
And
you, man.
love you too. Hoorah. Out here.
Hoorah.
Hey, guys, thanks so much for joining us tonight with Tim Lee. What an incredible fella. I mean, I only got to spend a limited amount of time sitting at the table with him at the Medal of Honor convention. And the time that I had was just, I got blown away by his story. He was so kind to give me a book. I read the book, and like you said, you can't put it down. And I was kind of homesick with COVID, so I had all that stuff and read his book and just was like, I've got to have this guy on the show. So in life, there are God points, and I truly believe that. And our life is defined by these points. Sometimes I think if you go one way, you can be defined by the points, and I think if you go the other way, the points help make your life. And I choose to have the glass half full. As we were talking about, a life lived in fear is only but a half life lived. So live your life to the fullest every single day. Tim and I were kind of talking about, because of the things going on with Mike, you just never know what your life will entail. You could get hit by a teenager texting or somebody texting driving down the road. And if you don't have things prepared in your life, it's going to make things hard for your other folks. But anyway, I'll see you next Tuesday. Thanks again for joining us. Freddie Joe Farnsworth, you're on deck, buddy. So I will see you next Tuesday at 7 p.m. And I've got guests lined out all the way through August now. This is incredible. Tall Tales with Taco. Like it, subscribe, share, and put it out there to your friends. It's getting big. Something I'm working on. If you guys haven't seen, there's a Top Gun page, and I seem to have a Top Gun theme in some of the F-14 guys that I've interviewed. We are actually going to have a great show with some incredible folks from the movie that were the actual Navy pilots. It's coming down the road. We're working on it right now. It's going to be a lot of fun. Just stand by, and I think you'll enjoy it. Until I see you again, hey, John, Jennifer, Paula, RV, Sean, Richard. Oh, it's Ned. How are you? Everybody, thank you guys so much for joining us tonight. Do me a favor, as I said, keep your prayers for Mike Costanza and his family. Let him battle this and beat it and come back in full strength to do great things with his life. Folks, until I see you again next Tuesday, adios, hasta luego, sa wiedersehen, tschüss, shesheni, au revoir, domo arigato gozaimasu, tano shinde kudasai, ciao, arrivederci, and tashakur. I say that every time I get off the airplane, or everyone's getting off the airplane. That's how I say goodbye, instead of going bye-bye or bye-bye, 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 bye, 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 bye-bye. I go adios, hasta luego, sa wiedersehen, tschüss. I do it all. Anyway, take care, guys. See you next time.